Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. So in today's video we're going to be using another technique with Gilding Flakes. This time we're using the Mega Flake Autumn Blaze Flakes from IndigoBlu, and I'm going to be using those nested Hexagon Dies from CraftStash. They're part of the creative craft products range. And then I've got this gorgeous honeycomb heart die from Funky Fossil Designs. I've already gone ahead and just die cut some black cardstock scraps with it because we're going to be using the die partially, so I'll show you that later on. I'm using this gorgeous stamp set called Queen Bee. It's from Funky Fossil Designs and it was designed by Mo's Art UK. And as you can see, it's a really good size. It's about 3.5 inches wide and just over 3 inches long. So it's a really good card front filler. So I've already gone ahead and got a 6x6 card blank, and I've die cut a hexagon from the front. So it's lost a bit of that strength, but we're going to be bringing that back in later on. I've already gone ahead and cut this frame. I've used a hexagon that's 5.25 or just under 5.25 wide, and the other hexagon, the outer frame, is 5.5. So I've already gone ahead and cut that. And then I've got this piece of acetate. Now that was using the larger die from the frame, so that was about 5.5, and that will be sitting behind the frame, and as you'll see, that will then attach to our card front. So the first thing that we're going to do is stamp on the acetate. So I've got an A5 All-in Create acrylic block, so I'll just attach the B, and then I'm going to add some Flitter glue to this piece of Phat Foam. So we're just turning this into the stamping pad basically, or the equivalent of an ink pad. And I'm just using my palette knife to push that glue into the Phat Foam. I have added a bit too much glue, so I'm just going to pop the excess to one side for now. We can then take our Phat Foam and use it just like we would an ink pad to ink up the stamp with the tacky glue. Now, if you don't have the Flitter glue, of course, any tacky glue is perfect for Gilding Flakes, and you can use this on stamps, through stencils. There's lots of different ways that you can use it with your Gilding Flakes. So I'm just making sure that I've got a really good coverage on the B, and then we'll flip that over and we'll stamp on the acetate. I'm using my grid lines on my mat to help me get a nice central stamped position on the acetate, and then we're just going to push that down all over. You do have to be quick if you're doing this on cardstock, but because we're doing this on acetate today, I've got a little bit more time to make sure that I've got really good coverage and pressure all over the stamp so we get a nice crisp image. And there you can see that stamp there on the acetate, absolutely gorgeous. All the detail is stamped through, so it's going to look really stunning when we add the Gilding Flakes to it. So I'm just going to take the Autumn Blaze Gilding Flakes. This has got some gorgeous gold, bronze, copper tones to it, and then some silver flakes as well. And all I'm going to do is pick out some of the darker coloured flakes and make sure I get a good mix of the different colours. And I'm just going to attach those down with my finger. Once I've covered all of that image, I'm just going to use my hand to rub off the excess, and I'm just going to put a scrap piece of paper underneath that so that we can catch all the bits, because we can pop those back in the pot. Once we've got the majority of the excess flakes off, we're then going to take this Scoochy, which is an abrasive foam, and we're just going to rub that all over the stamped image. And as you can see, as I'm doing that, all the detail of the stamp is starting to shine through. So I'm just going to continue doing that, and again we're going to use the scrap piece of paper to contain all the excess, and again we can pop that back into the pot. Once I'm happy that I've got all of the excess flakes off, I'm just going to spritz it with water and use a little bit of paper towel just to get off all the excess bits of flake dust. Because the acetate gets quite static, you will just need to give that a good rub just to get off all the dust, and there you can see the beautiful image has come through really nicely. So I've got some red line tape which I've checked fits the frame nicely. It's not going to show once we've stuck it down, and I'm just going to run that all around the front of the hexagon that we've already die cut on the card front, and I'm just using my cutter bee scissors just to trim that off. Once we've attached that down, I'm just going to remove all of the backing tape, and then we can place our acetate over this. The frame will then hide the acetate and the adhesive strips, so that's why we're popping this down first. Then I'm just making sure that it's lined up nicely on the front of the card panel, and I'm just going to use some liquid adhesive around the frame just to hold that in place. Of course, you could use the red line tape again, but I like the fact with liquid glue you've got a little bit of wiggle room, so I just wanted to make sure that I got the frame nice and central over that acetate window. Then for the decoration, I'm just going to take these bits that I'd already die cut with that honeycomb die. I'm just going to trim it down, and I just want to use elements of it. So we're just cutting it up. And remember that you can do this with any of your dies. Just because they come in a solid shape or in a particular way doesn't mean that you can't trim them down and use them how you want for a project that you're making. And I love how this honeycomb die really just gives that kind of wiry metal look there. So I'm just going to add a little bit of Cosmic Shimmer glue to the back of that, and then we can just stick those down. Any excess that's overhanging we will trim down later. Again, if you die cut this with double-sided adhesive sheets, you could of course then just peel off the backing tape and stick it down, but I find it just as quick and easy to do with the quick grab glue. I decided that because I was a bit heavy-handed with the bottle, I'm going to use my Ranger Multimedia matte glue for the rest of it, just because then if any does ooze out the side, you're not going to see it. It dries completely matte. So that's why I switched glues, if you're wondering. I'm then just going to flip it over and just trim off the excess with my scissors, and then the front of our card is decorated. So any little bits that are sticking up still, I'm just going to add a little bit more glue. I'm then going to do a little bit of die cut inlay, so I'm just going to use a few of those hexagons, a little bit of the matte medium glue, and I'm just going to stick those back in place. And then that just finishes off the front of the card nicely. So I did just pop the hexagons in place first before I'm then taking them back out and adding the glue, just so that I could see that where I've got them, I was happy with the position that they were going to be in. So next, to really make the Gilding Flakes pop on the front, I'm going to use this falling hexagon stencil from Funky Fossil Designs. And I'm just placing it behind there just to see how it's going to look, make sure that I've got the hexagons in the right place so that there's no kind of border showing through the acetate. And then I'm going to take some Distress Oxide inks. I've got Carved Pumpkin, Fossilized Amber and Black Soot. So before I start ink blending, I'm just going to tack that stencil in place. And I'm just using the mint tape from scrapbook.com to do that. So I'm then just going in with my blending brushes randomly with the Fossilized Amber and then the Carved Pumpkin. I really want to get a variegated or variable shades of these two colours through the hexagon stencil. And then I'm going to use the Black Soot just to kind of tone the colour down, just so that the Gilding Flakes through the acetate really pop when it's against the background. Of course, if your background was black, the Gilding Flakes are really going to shine. But here, because I've got a white background, I need to tone it down so that the Gilding Flakes are visible through the acetate. And as you can see there, it just helps the beast stand out a little bit more. So once I'm happy with that, I can just remove the stencil, and then we can see that the card stands up really nicely and the Gilding Flakes look really, really pretty through the acetate. I'm just going to add a sentiment. And now I thought I was going to use this one, which I'd already got in my stash, and I had it to the side of me, but I really wasn't sure. I didn't want to cover up any of the front, and I just wasn't really sure where it would go. So I then decided to go back to the stamp set and see if one of the sentiments from the stamp set would fit on the card. And again, I was trying to just work out where I could put a sentiment, where it was going to fit. And after a period of indecision, I decided to go ahead with the stamped sentiment, which reads, "A true queen knows that her crown isn't on her head, but in her soul." And it fitted perfectly at the bottom of the card between the bee's back legs. So it would sit really nicely in the frame. So because we've spent so much time and effort making our cards so far, I didn't want to take any chances. So I'm going to use my stamping platform here. The stamping platform that I'm using is from Vaessen Creative, but I know that the Creative Craft products range at CraftStash sells one that is virtually identical. So I'll link that in the description box below. I've got a Sizzix sticky grid in the stamping platform, so that's what's holding my card blank in place. And yeah, it just makes it really easy without using the magnets, especially if you're worried about marking your cardstock. So that's what I'm using today. I inked the sentiment twice using the VersaFine Clear Black ink, and then I can just peel it off the sticky mat. So there's the finished card for today. So I really hope that you've enjoyed this video. I've added some close-up photos now so that you can see how the card looks in real life. It really does look really, really pretty. And thank you so much for joining me. I really hope that you've enjoyed this video. I hope that you give it a go. And please don't forget to like and subscribe if you've enjoyed this video. And I really appreciate reading all the comments that people leave me. So thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Take care.